Alright folks, welcome back to the Driveway Engineer. I'm JR. Today we're going to discuss camshafts. Lately I've been inundated with camshaft questions. I'm going to try to take the top 5 most commonly asked and try to take some of the mystery out of this. If you're an advanced viewer, it's probably not for you, but if you're a beginner and you're a little overwhelmed, this is for you, so hopefully this helps. Let's dive right in here. So first up is, do I need new push rods? And the answer to that is maybe. To answer that, we're going to go over here. I'm going to show you guys this illustration here on my right. The cam lobe and the terminology that goes along with the cam lobe. Okay, you can see how it has a shape like a pear. That's why we call it a lobe. And the base circle, the actual round part, is what we call the base circle, right? So at some point, the max lift to the base circle, this dimension grows too great to actually fit through the cam bearing. And this is true on every cam and block engine. It doesn't matter if it's a flathead Ford or a 350 Chevy or a 390 FE or an LS or an LT or a Gen 3 Hemi or a Gen 1 Hemi. It just doesn't matter. At some point you get to the point where the lift is too much to fit through the actual block, through the cam bearing. So what they'll do is they'll go in there and they'll do what they call a reduced base circle, and they'll shrink this dimension up. By making this circle smaller, you then can add more lift. And what that causes is it causes you to need new, longer push rods. It's not exactly a hard and fast rule, but it's somewhere over, slightly over 600 thousandths of lift is where you get into reduced base circle cams on a Gen 3, Gen 4 LS style engine. Every engine's a little different, and some cams are a little, I know that there's some 610, 615 lift cams out there that are not reduced base circle. I know that there are some that are less lift that are reduced base circle. So if they've reduced the base circle enough, you won't have enough play in your hydraulic lifters, and you'll need to get longer push rods. And at that point, you'll need to measure. But before that, if you're running, the Elgin series cams, the Summit cams, the Sloppy Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3, the BTR no spring, all the common cams are not reduced base circle. So you just put your push rods in, you torque it to 22 foot-pounds, you spin it around, you torque it to 22 foot-pounds again, and you are done. And that's what makes LS engines so wonderful. They're like Legos. Let's move on to number 2. So number 2 is, do I need new springs? And the answer is absolutely yes. No matter what camshaft you're running, if it's a factory upgrade cam, if it's an LS6 cam, you need LS6 springs. The factory springs are barely adequate to hold the factory cams in. They are not good enough to hold any aftermarket cam at all, period. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. There are the no spring required cams out there. So unless you have a no spring required cam like from the one from Brian Tooley, you're going to need springs, almost certainly. And that's one of the draws of the Brian Tooley Racing no springs required cam. For $300, you're done. You don't need a converter, you don't need springs. It's not going to make the power that some of the other cams are, but it's not going to require all the other added expenses either. Let's move on to number 3. So this one's been popping up a lot lately, and I'm not sure what drives it. Maybe it's just my own mind is seeing it more. But how much lift before PTV? PTV is piston to valve interference or clearance. Obviously, you do not want your valve to hit your piston. So people are concerned about how much lift can they run before they have piston to valve interference. And it's a reasonable thought on the face of it. I'm going to take you guys over to Animated Engines, and we're going to look at this little animation here to show you why it doesn't matter. As a general rule, lift, well, let me say it like this. Lift in and of itself does not cause piston to valve clearance. We're going to go down here and see our little valve opened up, and then it closed. It closed way before the piston came up. So now we're on compression. Boom, we got a boom goes the dynamite. Down goes the crank. And then this valve, the exhaust valve, opens up, but you see that it will close way before the piston comes up. And this one doesn't open, the intake doesn't open until after the piston's on its way down. So what causes piston to valve interference is not the lift. You can run an inch of lift because at peak lift, the piston's 2 or 3 inches away from it. So unless you're running 4 inches of lift on a valve that's probably not 4 inches long, you're not going to have a problem. What will cause a problem is duration. If you have too much duration, then you get into, the valve's open for too long, the piston comes up and hits it. And again, the common cams that you guys are looking at when you're in my Facebook group or, in my comment section, the Texas Speed, Summit Racing, Elgin, Jegs, all this off-the-shelf stuff for ordinary combinations, it doesn't have too much duration, and you don't have to worry about it with an LS again. They're not, your old, on Ford 302s, on the Fox Body Mustang stuff, we really had to worry about this. We had to fly cut pistons, we had to clay the engines and all this other stuff. Again, LS engines they're like Legos. They just work. They're kind of amazing. You can be a real idiot and build an LS engine, right? Which you can see by the fact that I've done it. So let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is, will I need new pistons with different heads? And it's kind of a similar spin-off. Will a 706 head on an LQ9 cause an issue because of the smaller chamber? It's kind of what people think. And again, it's not, if you're new, it's not a dumb thought process, but it's not how it works. Where the valve sits in the head, it doesn't matter what the chamber size is. Where the valve sits in the head doesn't change. This valve seat stays in the same spot if you have a 58cc chamber from the factory or you have a 72cc chamber. Like the 706 valves sit in the same spot in relation to the piston that 317s do. What changes the chamber volume is how much material is in this area here, and maybe the size of this pad up here. But that's not what changes. They don't move the valves down. It's not like milling. If you mill your heads, you can get into an issue where you don't have enough clearance, where you've eliminated some of your clearance. You start cutting 40, 50 thousandths off your heads, you're going to have problems. And at that point, you're going to have problems with your intake bolting up as well. But again, LS engines, you take off, you got a 6-liter, you take off the 317s, you put on the 706s. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change any measurement. You don't have to do anything. They're like Legos. Let's head on to number 5. So number 5 is everybody's favorite. Which one is best? And again, that is up to you. The cam that's best for you and your crew cab square body dually that you're going to haul a camper while pulling a boat up a mountain is not what's best for me and my step side square body with a 3400 RPM converter that I just want to do donuts in. Everybody's needs are wildly different, and the way to go is to probably, try to source some other builds that are similar to what you're trying to do. There's a reason why I say this often. There's a reason why everybody does a thing, right? There's a reason why everybody jams an LS and everything on the road, because you're not going to make more power for less with anything else. There's a reason why everybody used small blocks back in the day, and every hot rod had a small block in it instead of a flathead Ford or whatever people thought was clever. There's a reason why Coyote swaps just don't take off. And there's a reason why everybody runs the sloppy stage 2. There's a reason why so many people gravitate to the BTR no springs required. There's reasons why people go to the Texas Speed stuff, but that's mostly because of their marketing team. And they got old Cletus out there screaming bald eagles at you. But, it depends. And what you're going to do for, a Jeep TJ that's going to idle down a trail, I would leave it stock personally. But there are torque cams out there, but I would leave it stock personally. It's different than what you're going to do for a drift car that's going to hang at 7,000 RPM for 20 minutes at a time. So, know your goal, first of all, and know exactly what you're getting into. You don't want to, if you don't have the money and you don't want to dedicate the budget to it, you don't want to buy a cam that requires expensive springs, longer push rods, and there's never a situation where you need hardened push rods or anything else on an LS for the basic guy. But you don't want to run into a snowball effect and then you wind up punting the whole thing because your build changed directions. That's what we always want to avoid here at the Driveway Engineer, right? We do not want to change directions. We want to buy other people's stuff when they change directions. So this should be hopefully short to the point. Hopefully you guys get what I'm talking about here. Hopefully this has helped you. And be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time on the Driveway Engineer. Thanks for watching, guys.